I become a new father, or a better father, I should say, every day, because I'm always thinking of ways that how I can be a better father. I'm 63 years old. My son 35 years old, and I'm still looking at that. How can I be a better parent to him? How can I do things right now? Same thing with my daughter. But again, because I'm a man, I focus on my son more just because I want him to develop strong qualities, because the stronger the man is, the stronger the family will be. The stronger the family is, the stronger the community will be.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, CB Baker. We got another great one here today. We are going to continue in our series of raising men. And today's topic is today's topic is men and changing our ways or behavior, or just how do we get the community back on its feet and back stabilized as men. We're going to be covering all different types of things. We'll be in the Bible. The Proverbs chapters 2 through 7 is what Pastor has told me to take a look at. And I told him, I said, 2 through 7, that's chapters. And Proverbs, you could go a whole podcast off just one verse. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna try to cover the majority of it, but I do highly suggest everybody read those chapters in Proverbs. It's a lot of wisdom in there. And for one, Pastor Daniels, if you go to chapter 2, verse 16, wisdom will save you from all adulterous women and from wayward woman with her seductive words. I can't tell you how many men need to hear that right there. But that's for a whole nother podcast. Like I said, we could do a whole thing just on that. Right. So welcome to the show, Dr. Daniels.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a beautiful area to look at. You're absolutely right. And the reason why I say those particular chapters is because here you have a man, Solomon, who is giving advice to his children. And he gives advice not just based on what he has heard, but this is someone who has survived and who has lived. And so now his thought process is, let me help you be better. Let me help you, take advantage of what the wisdom God has given me. And I think it's so important for us to do that as fathers, is because we know that the foundation of all communities is having strong families. When you have strong families, you have strong community, and that just builds everyone up in the community. And unfortunately, in our communities, Black communities, we have allowed our lack of family, our lack of unity, to kind of destroy who we are and what we are going to be. That's why we have the violence and all those kind of things. Right. So somehow, men have to start back being men. Men have to start back fathering their children, whether you're in the household or not. Right. So to me, there should be no such thing as a single parent household. Right. Because I may not live with you, but I can still be a father to my children. And the Bible gives us those things that we need to be looking at as how we can become better fathers, how we can become better teachers, and teach our young men the right way. Because if we teach our young men to be good fathers, good husbands, then that will become a tradition within our families, as that, to be good teachers. See, the women do it now, and they do a great job of it. Oftentimes women teach their daughters, they teach them to cook, to clean, and how to be good wives, how to be good, strong women, how to care for children. Right. We don't always teach our boys that. And I just say that, as a culture, we have to make that change. And that change has to come with this generation. We have to start teaching our young boys so that they can teach the next generation. And if we do it, it will only be a couple of generations where we are back moving forward, where we will have eliminated many of the problems we face now. They talk about how do you get rid of gun violence in the community? Well, no one is teaching people to lay down guns. Right. there's a reason why guys carry guns. I carried a gun when I was young because I feared. I had fear. Right. And when you have fear, you carry a gun. You carried a gun. That was your way out. Well, but what if all of our sons excelled? right? And then all of their sons excelled.
Right.
There would come a time when they would learn that you don't have to prove your manhood by fighting or killing, but you prove your manhood by the size of your bank account or by your viability in the community.
Right.
And it would change the whole direction in which we're going.
Yeah, I totally agree. What needs to happen is men themselves just need to step up and really fight to be in the child's lives.
Yeah.
A lot of times you see scenarios where, my baby mama is always giving me drama, blase, and they use that as an excuse to not be there for the kid and for the children. Sometimes it's plural, but it's like that shouldn't bother you. You should be able to handle that situation and be able to communicate as an adult to the woman and then raise your child. Like, it doesn't have to be a whole bunch of drama. Because it takes one person can have a whole bunch of drama. But if you like, okay, I'll come back to you when you have calmed down. You don't have to go back and forth, but you still need to fight to be in your child's life. And I think a lot of times, we've talked about this before, how men just give up, and then women themselves say, well, like you said before, like, you ain't got to take all the responsibility of raising that child. You had the child with somebody. Put it, like, send them over to the dad's house.
And I'll say this to all my brothers. I love you, but let me just put it out here. If a woman decides you can't see your child, it's your fault. The bottom line.
Right.
Because if I'm being the man I ought to be, here's my belief, and we're going to talk about, some details in a minute here. But if I'm being the man I ought to be, she's going to want me to be around my child.
Exactly.
There's a reason why women don't want the guys around the child, because they sometimes they're fearful that will be detrimental to the child, and sometimes they're fearful that the man is detrimental to them.
Right.
And it's not always because they think you're going to go upside her head, but if she's been hurt by you for whatever reason, I'm not saying you were a bad guy, but just the breakup could have hurt, or you could have felt one way about her and she felt a different way about you. She could have been madly in love, and that's why she allowed you to get her pregnant. And to you, it could have been, your chick on the side, right? Or whatever.
Right.
So when you did not, get into that serious relationship, it brought pain on her. So her pain may have been shown by her being angry and not wanting to see you, because that brings more pain. It's up to me to develop a relationship with her. Not that I have to, be what I'm truly not in my heart, but develop a relationship so her seeing me is not painful.
Right. So
me being around that unit is not painful. And then she'll want me to come around the child. She shouldn't have to ask me for child support, none of that kind of stuff. But I'm saying that, to me, kind of is a starting point. But then I also have to be that kind of parent, that father, where the child sees me with respect, but also wants me around, but also is learning from me, and so that the child can develop healthy habits. And sometimes that's not what we offer. And I'm not just talking about guys who's the baby's daddy. I'm talking about fathers who live in the home,
right?
Are not always teaching their children. Sometimes we leave that to the mother, and that should not be. And, biblically, the Bible says that's not what it should be. In fact, again, that's why I reference Proverbs, because Proverbs, Solomon spends a lot of time talking to his children, and trying to teach them his wisdom.
So, I can say I'm guilty of this. I don't sit around with my son Cameron and sit him down in a chair, and we have, deep conversations at a young age. But is that something that we should do as men? Like, as you have a teenage son, like, sit him down and have, like, purposely having conversations with your child?
I would say absolutely. And I can tell you, I started having conversations with my son in the womb. really
right.
did. And always has, even when he was a newborn. When my son woke up in the middle of the night, my wife was not the one that would go in there. It was me. And I would go in and I would talk to him. It wasn't always the bottle that soothed him. It was sometimes just my voice. I would talk to him. He would stop crying. And that process went on and on. When he was 2-3 years old, and we had, at that time, when it's still your only child, you give him everything.
Right.
And so we had a playroom just for him, one room with just his toys, and that's all it was. I would come home from work, and we would get a glass of milk and a box of Oreo cookies, and we would go in that playroom, and I would just talk. We would talk and play and talk and play, and because really I'm teaching him. And we had an old saying, if you had a rough day, he knew what was going on. He'd be like, Dad, we gotta hit these cookies till the blues go home. Because that was kind of our thing,
Right.
If anybody had a bad day, we're gonna get them Oreos, and it's like we going to the club or something, right? And so I taught him that way. Even potty training, I potty trained my son, not my wife. I did. And I talked to him. It wasn't this primeval thing like sit on the pot all day long. That wasn't it.
Right.
I took him in the bathroom with me, and I talked to him as I'm using the bathroom, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And we made a game out of it. Can you hit the hole right there with you?
Right.
And so that years and years, it never stopped. As a matter of fact, I would make time to talk to him. Like, for example, when he was, I would say 10, 11 years old, I would take him with me to DC, and we would have calm talk the whole time going up, conversations about life, about things in general, talk the whole way back. So I purposely would set things up for those kind of conversations. And if you ask him today, is it still with him? I'm going to tell you, yeah, because so now he's so used to that, he calls me all the time, it's a rare day that I don't get a phone call, and we all text, the communication is still there. He calls and we talk and, all this kind of stuff. Anything that's going on in his life, we're going to have a long conversation about it, long drawn out conversation. And it's not always me giving him how to do stuff. It's me painting the picture so he can see stuff. So he, just to clarify things. He's a grown man now. He's got to make his own decisions. But we started that process when he was an adolescent. Me giving him the full, just trying to paint the picture and say, now make your decision based on what we've had. The Bible says this in Ephesians. It says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger. And sometimes fathers make that mistake. We think that in order to get your child to respect you, they have to fear you in that, in that sense.
Right.
That's when they're young, that fear may work. When they get 16 and 17 and they kind of as big as you and as brawny as you,
right,
they're going to try you if it was all based on fear.
Right.
And the same thing says, provoke not them to wrath, meaning don't do those things that going to make them mad. It doesn't mean you can't chastise them.
Right.
I chastise my children. They'll tell you that. I chastise them. But I can tell you this, if you ask him, did it make him mad? He'll tell you no. As a matter of fact, one of the members of the church asked them that question. Said, your daddy sure is hard on you. And Chad said, I don't think so. That's just the way he is.
Right.
See, he didn't view it as being hard because it was always fair. My punishment was always fair. I always told my children ahead of time what the punishment would be. Not for everything, but in general. And I let them make a decision.
Right.
And once the punishment was over with, it was over with. I'm not going to keep arguing about it. Now we're going to go ahead and have a good time. Because you have a right to make a mistake. That's how I viewed it. You have a right to make a mistake. Just know there's going to be a consequence. And I'm not going to dog you out because you made the mistake. You just made a mistake. We're going to move on. And that's how we did things.
It's funny that you talked about the son going to try you. It was yesterday, matter of fact. Cameron came up to me and said, I can't wait till I'm a teenager so I could dunk on you. I looked at him. I said, you're not going to dunk on me. And what he don't know, I was just going to tackle him. So, but it's just interesting because I did the same thing to my dad. It's like for sons, it is that ability, like I want to win against my dad, against the father. And one thing I have done differently that from what my dad did with me that I'm doing with my son is when we play a game of basketball, I let him shoot unless it's at a certain point so he can have a chance to win. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens is I almost lose every game, but he walks out of there so happy and enthusiastic to be wanting to come back to play. Mm-hmm. Now, one game happens and he gets in close. Yeah, I'm tall. Boom, I swat the ball in the middle into the bushes. Now he's frustrated and don't want to play no more. Mm-hmm. So I said, now which one do I want to have happen? Do I want him to continue to play, to practice at it, or do I want him to be frustrated because I can't beat my dad who's 6'4", 300 pounds. Like, right, there's a lot of people out here that can't beat me even at 43. Right. So it's like, what is my goal? Where I'm going with this is as fathers, we need to understand like what is the end goal when we're training our kids, when we're talking to our daughters, mimicking what a good man should be, and people always joke around about Savannah, say she ain't gonna be with nobody broke because the dad give her everything. I said, well, I need to stop giving her stuff so at least you can feel like, but then do I want her to be with a broke man? So it's like, which one is it?
Well, I'll say this. You can be with a rich man and still be miserable.
Miserable. That's right. Yes, that is true.
And you can be with a broke man and still have a good time.
Yeah.
But to me, it's character. I mean, that's how I looked at it. It's not worried about anything, but how do I build character in my son? How do I build character in my daughter? And I got to tell you, as a father, I focus more on my son, not because I didn't love my daughter, but because my father focused on me. My mother did too, but I spent what I would call my formative years with my father. My parents were divorced. My father did not use corporal punishment on me at all. When I was living with him, when I was not under the roof with him and my mother, he would sit down and talk to you. I mean, when I say talk, man, he would talk. He would talk for an hour. I mean, see what seemed like an hour. I mean, I've been with seemed that way. But he always had these long conversations with me. And there would be times when he would be going somewhere. He would say, "Hey, Michael, come ride with me." And that's why I started doing that.
Right.
And he would just put me in the car and I'm going with him places. He'd just be talking to me about stuff. It could be anything, just having a conversation with me. But he also did something that I passed on, I think, to my son, is that he showed me at an early age that he felt that I was competent. So with me and my dad, there was no competition because he allowed me to be competent.
Right.
In those areas where he knew that I did have, I guess, an ability. For example, my father was not a highly educated man. He got his GED, but he wasn't a college graduate or anything like that. And I remember my father giving me documents and saying, read this and tell me what it means, and relate to his job. And I'd be saying, Dad, I can read it for you, but you can read too. He said, no. He said, but I don't want to just read it. I want you to tell me what I should do. And I'd be like, I'm 15 years old.
Right.
Okay. And he's saying to me, tell me what I should do. And I'm like, well, you're doing well. You own your own home. You got your own car. You got a boat. You're a supervisor on your job. But that's what he would do. So in doing that, it put a different relationship in there. I never thought I was better than him, but he helped me to see that, wait a minute. I don't have to compete with him because he's already setting me up.
Right.
And he said to me one time, he said, listen, I sent you to school for a reason. Because I wanted you to be the best. And so if you're the best and I believe in you, that means I can rely on you. That's what I have tried to instill in my own son. Sure, we played games and I would let him win, then sometimes I would beat him. Because, but I recognize the difference between our age, so I always handicapped everything. So anytime we played a game, I always handicapped it based on our age and our physical. And as his physique started to match mine, the handicap would go away.
Right.
Whatnot. And same thing with mental games, the handicap would go away. But I still acknowledged where he had, more knowledge than I had because some things he did. So I would ask him questions. I would ask him for advice on certain things. Even when I was the pastor, as a pastor, and I would go to him and say, hey, son, let me ask you a question. how do you think I should talk to this group of people? Talking to, younger people. And he would say, well, Dad, we want to know this, we want to know that. So I'm still asking him for advice.
Right.
And I also would ask them this, what kind of punishment do you deserve? What should the penalty be for certain things? Not after it happened, but before.
Right.
So we established up front.
Right.
So therefore it wasn't this, you being harsh and you being hard thing. And if we men start taking responsibility for the development of our sons, right? So that the communities that they move in, they start taking responsibility for the development of their sons. We're going to change the dynamic within one generation. We could change the dynamic. But the unfortunate thing is a lot of men haven't got to that point. You know what I'm saying? And my father was not always there either. What changed my father's parenting was God. When he really got into the church and started parenting me based on the Bible, that's when things changed. And my other siblings did not get the benefit of that because my parents were divorced, but I just lived with him. I got the benefit of having a father that parented me, made a huge difference in my life. So I use the principles of the Bible and Solomon's principles primarily to parent my son, because Solomon spends an inordinate amount of time, and when you read Proverbs, giving his son advice about women, right? Giving his son advice about life, giving his son advice about following God, giving his son advice about what friends he should hang around with, all those kind of things he talk about, which normally you don't think about the Bible telling you that, but it does. He tells them, don't hang around certain people, right? Because they're going to bring you down. Don't hang around certain women because they're going to bring you down.
Right.
Don't do certain things. Be forthright. Be honest with people. Let your words speak for yourself. That if you make a promise, hold on to that promise. He tells you all those things. He tells his son to do all those things. And so that's the approach I took, and continue to take, is that a father should always be in the process of teaching. Because I don't care how much my son knows, I have 29 years on him in experience. So I'm going to still be adding. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant young man, no doubt about it. But there's still some life experiences I still can teach him just by virtue of being older.
So same question that we have asked in the previous episodes on this series. Middle-aged man, your kids now are grown. They're 24, 25 years old. And you haven't been in their life so much as you ought to have been. What's the first steps that this man should take to get back in touch with his kids on that level?
First step is again, I'm going to go back to the Bible. The first step is to acknowledge that you haven't been there and to ask permission to get back in. Because see, now you're dealing with a grown man. You're in the middle age. Your son is grown now. So you have to acknowledge he's grown and treat him like he's grown. And then from treating like I'm grown, I got to come to you and apologize. Hey, I was wrong, and I'm not trying to grow you up now.
Right.
I'm just trying to show you I love you,
Right.
And so that's the conversation you start out with. And then the other thing too, again, is provoke not to wrath, right? It's what the Bible says. If you want to get your child mad at you, the first thing you can do is try to tell him what to do.
Yep.
If you try to tell a grown man what to do who you haven't been in their life, you just provoke them to wrath, right? It's not about telling them what to do. It's about listening to what they have to say. You just listen,
right,
and understand their point of view, and then in understanding, help them understand you. Explain. Don't try to excuse. That's the difference. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. Just explain why you're wrong. Don't excuse why you were wrong. Mm-hmm. So they can understand. But then also tell them what you learned from it. And when you tell them what you've learned, it helps them to grow. So if I tell, my child, that, your mother, lovely woman who she was, I hurt her, and that's why she didn't want me around, but I made a huge mistake, I made a mistake when I hurt her. I made a huge mistake by not trying to help her to heal. And I should have helped her to heal.
Right.
I should have helped her to do those things that would allow me back in her life. Maybe we could have never got back married again, but I still could have been in her life and still been a help in her life because we were friends at one time.
Yep.
I destroyed that friendship. I should have got it back right. I can tell my son those things. Then I can go on and say that would have allowed me to be in your life more. And I regret that tremendously because I missed out. I didn't see you do all these things, and it pains me now that I didn't see that. And that hurts me. And I don't want to, I'm trying to get it right now. I can't change the past, but I want to make everyone's lives better. I want to make your mother's life better. I want to be the friend I should have been then. I want to help her so her life is easier now. And I want to be there for you. You've done great. You've done extremely well. And I know, you did it without me. And I'm proud of you, and I want you to know that. And that changes the whole dynamic then,
Right.
Because I ain't trying to give you advice and tell you I'm grown and all this stuff. I'm just trying to let you know I'm there for you.
Well, I know they're not canonizing any new books of the Bible, but that was pretty good. That was some good sound advice. So that was real good.
Mm-hmm.
It really threw me off with my next question because you answered it so well. Because you did say that on the flip side, from the other perspective, from the person that is 24, 25 years old, the son, you get approached with this. We're hoping that you're able to get past, because there's some hurt there.
Absolutely.
How many movies have we seen that, that scene play out? Well, you're not my dad. Why are you coming here? And there's so much anger pinned up in there in the person. And then the father having to wade through that to try to reach his son. Mm-hmm. And like you talked about before with the generation, there's a good chance that we could start the process off with the middle-aged men reconnecting with their sons at a young age that are now having children of their own, that start breaking the cycle now. Mm-hmm. Even though we can get it done without the middle-aged man reaching back to his son, but it actually helps the healing process and it speeds it up.
Right. Absolutely.
So how does the middle-aged man come to grips with, long story short, real quick, we had talked off air about the Lord's Prayer. Mm-hmm. It says, forgive our debts as we forgive debtors, or forgive us ourselves. Mm-hmm. How do we forgive ourselves? How does the middle-aged man forgive themselves for not being in a child's life?
Well, I think that you have to understand you see. Oftentimes we don't take a look at honestly at who we are, right? If you think about honestly who you are, where you've come from, what you have done, we are a product, all of us, of our environments, right? And if I wasn't in my son's life, there's a strong possibility that somebody was not in my life. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't taught. I didn't understand. And so do I hold myself accountable for that which I did not know? Do I get angry with myself for that which I didn't, at the time, didn't have a clue about the impact of it? Well, that really doesn't change a whole lot when you think about it, right? So the issue is that there really is nothing to forgive, is my point. Nothing to forgive. What there is to do is to look at how I'm going to move forward, right? What will I do to get so that tomorrow is better than yesterday? People like to vilify, people who have not been good parents. But parenting is not something you're taught. It's an on-the-job process. And I gotta, I'm honest enough to tell people that just because you're in the household with a child don't make you a good parent.
Right.
And just because you're not in the household don't make you a bad parent. You can be in the household and not have parented your child. But you don't say to yourself, I need forgive me for not being a good parent. No, and you can be out of the household and be a good parent. So to me, you have to look at it in a real sense. If you look at it from that standpoint, then what really becomes is not that I have to forgive myself, I have to understand myself and why was I not there?
Right.
And now let me make that change and make that behavioral switch so that I can be what I need to be now. Because at 21 years old or 17 years old, you can't be a good parent.
Right.
You're a child.
That's right.
You can say I should have been there, but you're a child. You literally are still a child. When you're 17, you don't think that way, right? So you're still a child. You're not really at that point where you can truly, in my opinion, raise a child until you have matured yourself. And few people are that mature at 17. I can tell you that. Women or men.
Yeah. You can keep up.
So why we presume that they should be, to me, defies logic. Why should I expect a 20-year-old man or woman to be mature enough to parent?
Right.
When we know when you get my age, they weren't. They aren't.
Right.
So I have to just look back at my own life. When I look back at my own life, and I realized that there are things I did when I was, because I was 28 when my son was born. I look back and say, you know what? There's a lot of things I would have done different. A lot of things. And it didn't make me a bad parent. I just didn't know.
Right.
And it wasn't that my parents weren't good parents either, that kind of thing. But some parents don't like to admit that. There's some things you just don't know. Like I rushed my child through school, right? That don't make me a bad parent that I rushed him through school. I put him in school a year early. It didn't make me a bad parent that I put him in school a year early. But I think back now, I'm thinking, well, why? What was the benefit?
Right.
Why did he need to grow up fast?
Right.
What difference do it make?
Right.
I look back at my own college life and would say, I wish I had stayed in college longer. Why was I rushing to get out here to pay bills?
Right.
So I'm just saying, it's just something you just had to step back and say, well, I may not have been perfect, but, I just did the best I could do with what I had.
Yeah. It's funny you said that because I tell people all the time about the situation with schooling and the coronavirus and the pandemic. I said at the end of the day, it's man-made on when a kid should learn a certain thing. Mm-hmm. Certain things. I get the early stages of education, but if you didn't make it to trigonometry in your senior year in high school, I think you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, you always pick it up in college.
I think you'll be fine. And then I talked about like how your junior year, like really high school is over with your sophomore year. Your junior year, you're dealing with stuff that you could be interested in for junior year and senior year, then on through college. So, all right. So we're coming to the end here. So anything you'd like to bring up before we close out?
I would just say to every, father, every man, let's start anew. Let's start. I don't care how old you are. Let's start anew. I become a new father or a better father, I should say, every day, because I'm always thinking of ways that how I can be a better father. I'm 63 years old. My son's 35 years old, and I'm still looking at that. How can I be a better parent to him? How can I do things right now? Same thing with my daughter. But again, because I'm a man, I focus on my son more just because I want him to develop strong qualities, because the stronger the man is, the stronger the family will be. The stronger the family is, the stronger the community will be. And so I never stop learning. I'm still learning. I'm still progressing to be a better father to a son that's 35 years old.
All right. You heard it here. This is your host, CB Baker. Thank y'all for tuning in. See you next time.